Right, so joining me next is a man who turned his life around. It is, of course, time for Outside. After being left homeless at the age of just 16 when his mother kicked him out for drug dealing, Errol Lawson used to spend his time on the streets, hanging around with gangsters and criminals. But against all odds, he turned his life around to become one of the best-selling authors of 3 books, a business owner and a pastor. It is, of course, time for Outside, and joining me is Errol. Errol, thank you so much for talking to us and joining us. Wow, I mean, what a colourful life you've had.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's great. And what fabulous teeth as well. Oh, mine are nothing like that. Mine actually look yellow compared to yours. So talk to me about your upbringing and where were you born? Talk to me all about that.
Yeah, so born and raised in Birmingham, inner city Birmingham, where I lived with mum and dad. I went to a primary school called St. Mary's Primary School, right in the heart of inner city Birmingham. And age 11 in year 6, I was the only boy to pass their 11 plus. So you can imagine my parents were chuffed. It was a phenomenon. I wasn't so excited. My friends were all going to other comprehensive schools in the inner city. Dad said, son, you're going to Bishop Vesey's Grammar School, whether you like it or not. And he bought me these really pointy shoes I had to wear to fit in. He said, then we moved house to be closer to my new school. And then my parents divorced. And so as an 11-year-old kid, my dad was my hero. And him leaving the family home was an emotional turmoil began for me. I didn't know why dad had gone, where he had gone, what was going on, no answers. And my reaction was to rebel. And that I did. I began to just find myself around the wrong crowd. I just remember walking down this road called Carter Road, saying to myself distinctly, I don't care anymore. Forget this, forget life. I made up my mind that I was going to do my own thing. And age 13, started smoking weed and selling weed and things of that nature. And life started going downhill. Long after that, around age 13 again, I get a letter from my dad in the post one day saying to me, son, I'm sorry, son, I've made some bad choices and I'm in prison. That was the first time. I was 13. And a few months later, my uncle came to collect me and take me down to visit my dad in HMP Wormwood Scrubs. And never forget it, 13 years old. I was crying my eyes out, but I wanted to see him. And it changed my life. Again, I came back to Birmingham that day with a story that my dad was in prison. And for my friends, that gave me status, it gave me reputation, it gave me this extra kudos. And I continued in that pathway of going downhill, doing my own thing, just crime, gangs, you name it. And it came to a head again about age 16 in year 11 in school. I managed to stay in school somehow, several run-ins with the police here and there. At 16, one day before school, there was a knock at the front door, and I was the closest to the door, so I opened the door, and there were 2 big burly men standing there wearing their grey suits, and they ask, is Errol Lawson here? I'm Errol Lawson, can I help you? Errol Lawson, you're under arrest, they say. It's the police at my front door, now in my hallway. I'm like, who are you for real? They put handcuffs on. They show me their badges, Sergeant so-and-so. They take me away, and I remember my mom and my siblings there watching me being taken to the back of a police car. If you can imagine, in my family, my nan had this boast that none of her kids have ever been in trouble with the police before, and I'm being taken away. The next day, my mom sits me down. She says to me, son, I love you. I mean, she's working like 3 jobs to keep the house going, to keep food on the table. And she says to me, son, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. So you're going to have to move out now, find your own way, do your own thing. And I was made homeless at 16 years old. And I lived in a hostel in a place called Lazelle's in Birmingham. I moved around about 12 times between the ages of 16 and 19, constantly moving around, nowhere to go, no vision, no hope. If you'd have seen me at 16 years old, you'd have thought to yourself, this kid is not going to make it. There's no hope for him. It's not possible. But by the grace of God, I'm here today. In fact, I go back to my old schools now, and I do training for staff and workshops for students, and my old teacher's still there, and they're like, how on earth have you come back here, Errol, to be doing this? And my life has completely changed. It wasn't quick. Around age 19, I had what you might call a date with destiny. I found myself standing in front of a judge in Birmingham Magistrates Court, and I was being sentenced. And the judge who was there across from me, wearing his grey wig and me in my grey suit, trying to impress him, And he says to me, hey, Mr. Lawson, you're not going to prison today, but you are going to do 100 hours of community service. I breathed a sigh of relief. What that meant was that every Friday for 100 hours, I'd go to a place in Handsworth called Law, Leisure and Learning, owned by an old Irishman called John Holcroft. John was just an amazing man, amazing community man, passionate, fiery character. No one messed with John, you know. And John said to me, you know, Errol, you're different, kidder. Errol, I believe in you, he'd say to me. That was his mantra. I believe in you. Come on. Long story short, John ended up becoming a father figure to me. Literally, like the dad I never had. And he just saw past my behavior, my mindset, my attitude. And he'd take me into council meetings, Nana. He'd show me things I'd never imagined seeing. I'd be sat next to him in boardrooms and be saying to myself, is this all it takes? Is this all it is? I can do this, you know? And with this help, I started my first company at 19 years old, and my life began to turn around. And just from then onwards, you know, I found Christ, became a Christian, then became a youth pastor at a local church, and then became a pastor of a church, now leading a congregation of people. And I speak all around the UK. I'm best-selling author, 4 books.
Well, I was going to say,
get to train in some of the most amazing places. And
well,
God has been so good. So
well,
good.
I can see you're definitely a talker. It's so good to hear the story, though. You tell a great story. I was mesmerised. It's amazing, isn't it? So throughout, like, some of the hardest times that you had, especially between the sort of the divorce, because it's interesting, because later on in the show we're talking about whether marriage and being married is actually a better thing for society. So it was really that divorce and that set things off for you on this sort of path. In your view, would you say that if your parents had stuck together that you probably wouldn't have travelled this path?
Interestingly, right, I had friends who had gone through similar situations and didn't fall off as far as I did because there was another father figure or granddad, uncle, someone else in their lives maybe that was able to offer that affirmation, that support, that encouragement to be there on the touchline when they had their football matches, you know. And I think it's critical. It's critical. Fatherlessness is a sad epidemic today in our society, and we know that we look at the prison population, for example. Many of those young men in prison today have been in fatherless situations. So undoubtedly, marriage as an institution, I think, is a bedrock in our society. And had I had mom and dad at home, my chance would have been I would have been much better off, 100%.
And you got involved in gangs, obviously, and I suspect to have that family unit feeling, because that's what they say. A lot of young men get involved in gangs, so it feels like they're one of the lads. And even some of the things you said, it sounded like you wanted a sense of belonging. How difficult was it to get out, though?
I had no alternative now, and this is the reality for a lot of people. People ask me, Errol, well, would I change it? Would I have done it differently? At that stage in my life, there was no other option than to find a group of people, not even say find, I grew up with them, so was to belong to, connect with, be a part of a group of people that I could find safety, protection, love in a weird way, right? Acceptance, cover, you know. So critical, right? Getting out of it wasn't so much about, like, it wasn't like a tussle to get out. It was a set of circumstances that brought me to a place where people offered me opportunities that I would not otherwise have. There was nowhere else to turn, but John came into my life and I made the decision. If you imagine this scenario, there are 3 of us standing outside John's building one day. And we're all there smoking our spliffs, and we're all involved or connected to gangs at least. And he asked us, says, hey lads, I want to start a football team from this building, he says. I'll give you the kit, the league fees, the minibus. Any of you guys interested? We looked at him, took another drag on our spliffs, said, nah, you're all right, mate, forget that. For some reason, at the end of the day, I went back to John and I said, John, tell me more about that football thing you said earlier. I had nothing else to do. I love playing football. He said, yes, Errol, I'll give you the kits, the nets, the league fees, the minibus, whatever you need, kid. I want to start a team. What are you saying? I said, all right, I'll give it a go. And I started this team, and all the players were gang members. I mean, hardcore gang members. And for about 6-9 months, I ran this Sunday football team. It was crazy. fights with other teams, fights amongst our own players. Some days 6, 8 players showing up. It was crazy. My first ever leadership experience. But it was being around that John character, and seeing the impact of someone like John in my own life, that what made me want to be a John for thousands of other young people and leaders and individuals around the world. Knowing that one person, that one voice in your life, if you choose to hear that voice, can make a huge impact. And so getting out I was given a lifeline in many ways by John, and I chose to stick with him. I chose to believe what he said about me and my potential. And when I started to do the projects and the businesses that I started to do, my friends weren't interested, to be honest, because it meant coming into the light somewhat. It meant coming into the public space, because I was doing things for young people and projects and stuff. And I'd say, yo, lads, come and help me out. Come and do this, come and do that. And they weren't interested. And so the relationships just...
Well, you've written some books, and you're an author. You've written some books. Briefly tell us what they're called, and if people are interested and want to find out more about you.
Yeah, brilliant. So my first one's called From the Postcode to the Globe: How to Overcome Limitations and Realize Your Potential. A postcode is a small place, a confined, limited place. A globe represents possibility. So this is a great book for young people, those that work with them, who inspire you. My second one's called Teenpreneur: How to Build a Business in Your Teens. If you have a young person in your life who has entrepreneurial traits, I did it at 19. I've seen kids all around the world now reading this book and are beginning to do the same thing. And my third one's called The 5 Core Abilities of Highly Effective Leaders. But Nana, listen, I love to speak, as you can tell. I love to go into organizations and go into schools, speak to young people. My website is there. It's called Emerge Leadership, emerge-leadership.com. You can also find me as part of the Art of Being Brilliant team of trainers and speakers. We speak all across the country in all kinds of public and private sector organizations, inspiring individuals and teams just to flourish and to be the best they can be.
Well, Errol, be the best you can be. I love that. We'll leave it there. It's really good to talk to you.